Hey, White Sox fans, guess what? It's been a while. I know you missed us. You missed me because I'm the one who always, you know, screwing these up and not doing them every week. Darren Black's he's always ready. He hears the doorbell and he thinks it's podcast time, and it's just the guy delivering pizza again. It's such a drag for him because he doesn't get to talk every week about the listening stellar Chicago White Sox organization and the three levels, just the four levels we're going to talk about this time. We're not really going to get into the rookie leagues too much on this podcast because guess what, Darren? Just on a whim, I said, you know what? Let's break down first half MVPs, even though they don't really, we discussing just now before we went on air that they probably don't actually formally do break seasons into first half and second half. Certainly they don't at AAA. So however contrived this is still our idea. This is what we're going to do and roll with, because why not? We got to find something to talk. We're talking about the same 10 guys or 5 guys every week or every other week. So Darren, thanks for being game and doing this, playing this game with me, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the same 10 guys like the entire year until the draft. It's like
there are friends, Darren. It's like they're extended family. So let's talk about some friends who have been playing most of the year, if not the entire year, in Charlotte, or maybe spending some time in Chicago. The game show we're doing here is sort of, I'd like to know, in your eyes, who may be going into the season you figured would be the MVP of the season, or let's just say the first half, because we're only halfway through the season. And then I guess who really has turned out to be that MVP. And maybe in a case or two, it's the same guy or awfully close. And, some that we have had some surprises. With the Charlotte Knights, have you been surprised?
So heading into the season for Charlotte, I get it. They are a little wonky because there were several guys that you could say that should have been in the majors, but then weren't. Like way back when Jake Berger was going to start the year in Charlotte, but then got promoted right away because of an injury. But if you just kind of take him out, I think realistically, everyone should have expected Romy Gonzalez to be the top guy there. And because of injury and poor play, he just hasn't. I mean, he really hasn't gotten on the field. Just in this past weekly update, he was only in a game, so he's still not really getting in. But since then, it's probably the trio of Blake Rutherford, Adam Hazley, and Sebi Zavala have probably been the 3 best guys. I think Sebi Zavala is going to be the guy that I go with. Because there really isn't any pitching option either. You could have said heading into the year, Cade McClure was a guy to watch out for. Jimmy Lambert, maybe, but he was coming off of an injury and no one was really expecting him to go long. But now Cade McClure is an actual reliever, not just kind of a long guy. He's being used late innings. So maybe we'll see him in the majors in that kind of a role later on. But yeah, it's Sebi Zavala, probably the most surprising because he hasn't had a good offensive stint in any level since 2019, 2018. It's been a while for him, and now he's back in the majors and doing fine in 5 games. He'll probably be sent back down and DFA'd soon, but he's doing fine.
Yeah, and the extra twist is you would have never guessed that he would be your first half MVP for Charlotte at first base, because basically he's been a first baseman.
Yeah, because they've had a lot of catchers, and now they're all gone because Yermin is now officially gone, and Sebi is now in the majors and might be claimed when they have the DFA. So it's it'll be interesting when they do that. But
who knew White Sox minor leaguers were in such demand, Darren? But these reports, these pockets should be way more exciting.
Yeah, Charlotte's bad.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk briefly about Romy Gonzalez, because I probably wouldn't have picked his MVP because I thought he'd probably break camp with the team, because I was, of course, very high on Romy based on last year. Would you have anticipated, was there reason to anticipate the reason that he isn't the MVP, and that seems to be, I mean, obviously it's performance and injury, but really the injury. Had there been indications in his past that he would have been susceptible to injury? We've got guys like Mike Rodolfo, where you say, well, he can't be the MVP because he'll probably only play half the season. But was there an indication that Romy wouldn't have been a guy that would have been on the field?
I mean, I know he in 2019, he missed a few games just here and there, but there's never been a prolonged stint of injury for him since he was drafted in 2018. So I mean, it just kind of happens especially for a guy that just has to kind of play everywhere and just has to get his body ready for, I mean, literally every position. It's probably not like something that he can deal with that often, but that's basically what his, struggles have come down to. It's just not being on the field, not being at the plate, not seeing pitches. And hopefully he will stay on the field, because I assume they're going to need him eventually.
Yeah.
But when he was actually playing for that, I think 3-ish weeks where he was actually getting in, 5 of the 6 days, 4 of the 6 days, he was doing, pretty okay. He was striking out a lot, which he does, but he was showing decent power and still walking, but he just has to stay on the field.
Maybe it's just going to be, maybe it really is 2023 for him, because it seems like Mendick is like great. We'll put that in quotes, of course, even though most of you are listening, not watching, but great 1 year. And like last year, it was like, oh boy, poor Danny Mendick. He's not only having a poor year, but he's got totally passed by Romy Gonzalez. And now he's going to be like buried in the system. No, Romy was hurt, did not perform well. So, Mendick got the shot, and, he's ran with it to whatever degree on the 2022 White Sox. That's damning with faint praise. Okay, a name that did not come up on your end, so I'm going to just have to call you. Nah, I'm not trying to trip you up. You're probably going to tell me why he's not the guy. But would Yolbert Sánchez be a guy that we could call the MVP for Charlotte?
I'm including him in the Birmingham conversation later more often, because that's just where he started, because I'm kind of hedging on some of these because there's not, a ton of options.
It's the same 10 guys, right?
Yeah. So, but he has not been doing as well of late right now, but if you consider his whole, entire season, AA and AAA, he certainly would be there. But I still think Sebi Zavala, he has like a 150 WRC plus, so that's pretty hard to beat.
Okay, so you're a Sebi fanboy. It's cool. I accept it, Darren, and we can move on. All right, so let's move on, because you are demoting, in a sense, for the purposes of this exercise, Yolbert to Birmingham. But going into the season, I would have thought it would be a given that Jose Rodriguez would be your preseason MVP. Was he like roughly maybe equal with Sanchez, or did you really think Yolbert might be the better bet because he actually does bring the defense?
No, Jose Rodriguez, he was clearing away the guy that you would watch out for and expect to be the best guy on the team. And I mean, he just really hasn't. He's not been very good at all. Yeah. He did have a decent week last week, bat to ball wise and walk wise. He still has not shown much power, which was a concern to end of the year last year, and he still is not showing it right now. But it's progressing. He's just been average the past couple of weeks, which is actually better than he has been. Yeah. So hopefully that he can start turning around. But it was definitely Jose Rodriguez and then Jason B. Were the two guys to head into this year that you would have expected to kind of just pop. And I know some people could also throw in Davis Martin heading into the year. Some people liked him more than others. But Jose Rodriguez and Jason B, the two guys that you expected to be better, and they're just not. Easy
to say Davis Martin now. Come on, people, we're calling you out. If you were tabbing Davis Martin as the MVP for the Birmingham Barons, I'm officially calling you out and calling BS on that one. Okay, so then the actual MVP, I'm guessing you're throwing Yolbert into the mix, but of course, then we've got Lenyn Sosa.
Yeah, so the actual MVP is Lenyn Sosa, and Yolbert Sánchez. I mean, he's still really, really good, great bat to ball guy, great fielder. But Lenyn Sosa is also pretty decent on the field. Right now, he's mostly a shortstop, but he's also plays second and third, so he kind of plays everywhere. We're same with Yolbert, but he's just showing unbelievable power that I never would have or well, no, if someone would have expected a 200 ISO from Lenyn Sosa, that someone should hire you to do something.
Darren's calling you out if you were.
Yeah, but I mean, probably the most impressive thing, I mean, the power is great, but a 10% drop in strikeouts from his AA stint last year, like his lowest K rate since his time in the AZL at that point, the stateside rookie league, and he's thrown his hat, same with Yolbert, into the mix of an MLB second baseman, and you would have expected Yolbert to be in that to start the year, but definitely not Lenyn Sosa. So got to give it to him. And then special mention Davis Martin, because he's actually in the majors right now, and he started in.
Yeah, he's like the fourth starter in the system. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and he's been good. He's been good wherever he's been. Home runs is Davis Martin's trouble, and if you just watch him pitch, you can see why. He leaves a lot of things up. But both guys really, really good. And one is got an accelerated timeline straight to the majors, while the other one, the GM has said, we'll think about it later.
Right. Can't even get him to Charlotte, for crying out loud. There's no interstate travel for Lenyn. Sorry, Lenyn, I continue to, I was calling you Lenyn for so long because of some sort of weird lefty thing. Then I think I just threw like a Lenyn or something. I really am having trouble with that name, and I apologize. But Lenyn, you are definitely unquestioned, or pretty much unquestioned, because Davis Martin just blew into the majors, MVP for Birmingham. Let's take a break, Darren, and then we will travel to the Class A level and see how things have turned out compared to what we thought they would be to begin the season, now that we're somewhat at the midpoint. We will be back in a minute. Stick with us, people. Hey, White Sox fans, it is Southside Sox on the Farm, number 30. It's podcast 30. I'm Brett Ballantini, your genial and somewhat uninformed host, and I'm here with our subject matter expert and tireless minor leagues worker, Darren Black, spewing all sorts of knowledge and expertise. And occasionally I try to trip him up, and he laughs and he tells me why I'm wrong. It's just a fun thing we do roughly every 10 days. We can't really say every week. We can't really say every 2 weeks. So let's just say every 10 days, tune in. Number 31 will be like late next week or something. Anyhow, Darren, we have gotten through some MVPs, presumed and actual, for first half. And of course, as always, read Darren's weekly updates. Obviously, he's doing, I believe, 3 days a week, sometimes 4 for our daily updates. He does our weekly summaries as well, where he sort of names his MVPs as we go. So I guess you could count all of them up. Go back to all the articles, count up each guy he's featured, and see if he's lying now. You can try to call Darren out. It's not just me. You can do it at home. Write in care of Southside. So you write to me, and then I will. We'll do our mailbag next week, and we'll say, hey, Darren, this is how you're wrong, because there's only 7 guys to choose from, but you chose the wrong 7. I'm sorry to have to let you know. Maybe there is a reader out there who thinks that way. Okay, we are at high A now. We are back in the Carolinas, and really going into the season, this was the team. I don't know what we're supposed to think of this team. It's been the best team in the first half, which, again, damn with faint praise, because they are actually over 500 by a few games, and that qualifies
2 or
as
3.
definitely the best. They're the Birmingham Barons of the 2022 season. Who's your MVP going in, and who do you think really is pulled it off first half wise?
So I mean, I know I said throw away Davis Martin. Someone could have said him, but legitimately, people could have said 2 different guys. Oscar Colás is who I would have said, and then Bryan Ramos is another guy who I think some people actually might rate higher right now. But those 2 guys definitely heading in the season, at least hitting wise. Pitching wise, I think I would have said Matthew Thompson, not, an inspired choice, but I wouldn't have, been mad if you said the actual best pitcher of the staff so far, who's now in Birmingham, and Sean Burke. If you would have said him, I would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
Because he, in his 10 games that he's pitched, he hasn't pitched in a couple of weeks, but he's been pretty good. He's looked like the best arm in the system until Norge Vera came back about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you will notice there's been a distinct lack of mention of arms, and that is not by accident. There really almost isn't anybody to discuss of note. And yes, if someone had said Matthew Thompson, that would be you're winging it. I mean, great. And I mean, going in, you might have earmarked him as the guy most likely to be the best pitcher, but that'd be a huge stretch if you thought, okay, clearly he's going to be the best player on this roster because he'd done nothing. Again, that's like backing into the award. So yeah, you couldn't really do that. But coming out of it then, Colás, obviously a lot of hype and a guy who seems to be like almost playing like too low for what his level should be. And Ramos, a guy who's hit and as you've mentioned so many times, was basically just 1A behind Jose Rodriguez last year in terms of a guy lighting it up with the bat in 2021. Who comes out of this first half as being the guy that you would consider the MVP for the Dash?
So you've got if you're going to be top prospect heavy, you should say Bryan Ramos. Because he actually has been really good this year, probably the best. He's been better than Oscar Colás. Mm-hmm. Or you could also lean on Sean Burke, who got promoted to Double-A with a sub-3 ERA when he did get promoted. And it's just barely above 3 right now. But as I said, he hasn't pitched in a couple weeks. But I mean, Tyler Osich has been really, really good with the bat this year, but he is kind of older. If you want to stick with true surprises, Terrell Tatum has got to be a name that you got to mention because he was out of this world in low A, but he's not been as good with the Dash, but it's pretty hard to replicate a 179 WRC plus, that's what he was doing with the Cannonballers. Or you could go with a guy that's been there the whole season, Duke Ellis, undrafted 2020, who's showing fantastic speed and great bat to ball skills. He is, again, to bring up age with high A, he is 24 and he's a bit older than what you would expect. Like Bryan Ramos is 20, so I would say that his season's been more impressive as a 20-year-old than Duke Ellis is as a 24-year-old. But that's kind of all the guys that you can have to pick from. My personal, I'm going to stick with Bryan Ramos because he is younger and doing it at a younger age compared to everybody else that we mentioned already. And he's showing everything that you would want of him to show coming into the season. That's things that Jose Rodriguez hasn't been showing, which is basically power. Ramos is continuing to just clobber the ball. Even last week when he really wasn't walking that much, he still had 2 homers and they were crushed. So you got to be happy with him. And then the other 3 surprises with Osich, Duke Ellis, and Terrell Tatum, just kind of icing on the cake for other guys.
Yeah, you threw a lot of names out there, but all I could hear was Terrell Tatum because Darren, he's my guy. So, I love that you mentioned that and I didn't have to bring him up. No, Bryan Ramos certainly seems to be a very reasonable choice there. Does it concern you as the MVP, contrasting directly, let's say, with Colás, a guy who actually was thrown somewhat surprisingly into center field and seems like he's acquitted himself okay there? Bryan Ramos doesn't seem to have a position, doesn't seem to be able to field at this level or based on the way he's hitting. Do you care about that?
Eventually, we'll talk about Colson Montgomery and Wes Kath soon if you want to talk about bad defense. So it doesn't look as bad compared to those guys.
You don't have to look hard in the organization. There's always worse defense.
Yeah. But I think odds are, like, he doesn't play a bad third base, but I think the odds are that he's going to end up being at first whenever he gets up.
Big shock. It's a system of first baseman, Darren.
Yeah,
I knew where you were going with that.
But he is a guy that can actually play third. I know a lot of people were saying in the offseason, people said that Andrew Vaughn could play third in college, and this is not that case. Bryan Ramos can actually play a little third. Though, is that his position in the majors? I wouldn't expect that yet, but he is a better third base than Wes Kath right now. And probably a better third base option than, I guess, if you want to count Lenyn Sosa in that equation, Lenyn might be the best third base option, but he can actually play second and Ramos cannot. So that's kind of where the defensive positioning is on the low minors for the White Sox. Everything in limbo.
When you really come down to it, we can pretty much just say Lenyn Sosa MVP of all levels. He's really like the only guy who is the MVP in the minor leagues at all. So if there's any doubt, just give him the MVP at each level because he's been the only guy who has not only performed well, but, and he's also managed to surprise a little bit too. Just a stunningly good first half for him. So exciting if he could keep it up in the second half. Um, all right. Well, there's one more level. Kannapolis, Darren, started out 1-85 last year, and they are actually better this year than last year, although I wouldn't call them good. So it's nice that they're better, and that's come along with some players performing better. Maybe we just thought to give up on the Benjamin Baileys or something, but it's been nice to see some guys actually maybe creep back slightly onto the radar. But I'm curious because as you go down the levels, it becomes more and more of a crapshoot, more often than not. So who going in maybe to the season did you think would be the Cannonballers MVP? And then where's it stand now?
Well, I mean, going in, it had to be Colson Montgomery, and it still is. So that, simple as that with Kannapolis. Like West Cass, it started out really, really, really slowly and has gotten much better since then. As we said before with the defense, both of those guys, Cass and Montgomery, are not, lighting it up in a good way defensively. But both are showing exactly what you want them to see. For Cass, he's walking a lot more, striking out a little bit less, but over 30% in low A is still concerning. And Colson Montgomery is on a 29-game on base streak. So that's really all you need to say about Colson Montgomery's season. About a month worth of games, he's been on base.
Yeah, this is a hard game to play because the White Sox are so weird with their first round picks. They like to do like the Chris Sale thing. So it's like, they play in the majors by the end of the year of their draft year. So you don't get these true guys who are going to work their way up the system, but it's not been often, because even with Jake Berger, who did well, but then he got hurt, almost right away. It's been a while, since we've, it checks many boxes. First of all, a prep guy that you would see work all the way up from rookie ball. And then a guy who actually does seem to be performing. I know last year's rookie season was like, it was okay, but I mean, that's such an abbreviated bit of weirdness. Yeah. Anyway, so it's gotta be sort of a relief. Oh, not just to you as our subject matter expert, but probably the front office to say, oh, hey, this guy's actually sort of what we thought he was.
Yeah, especially after the recent failures of high school pitching draft picks, Jared Kelly is still in Kannapolis, not doing well. And we just talked about Thompson and just brushed over Dahlquist because it seems like he shouldn't even be talked about that much anymore. But yeah, I mean, they're two high school bats that they drafted this year are working out, offensively at least, and they're all showing everything that you want to see. They're going to have to fill out their frame. They're going to have to improve on their plate discipline, not as much as Colson Montgomery, for example, compared to Cass. But I mean, the main thing for them is just get better at defense, stay on the field, hopefully don't get injured, and slowly move up the system until hey, it's end of 2023. Do we take these guys and from, hopefully they're in AA at that point if they start out hot next year in high A. Do you say, hey, do we put them in Charlotte for the last month, see what happens? Which that's best case scenario, I think. 2024 is probably the first time that they could sniff the majors, but even then, like, these guys are 19 and 20. I wouldn't expect that. It takes transcendent players like Juan Soto for them to move up that much. I don't think any of these guys are Juan Soto.
Yeah.
But
and even what you described would be the non-Lenyn Sosa route, because it seems like what can he, what more can he do? I mean, I don't know if the White Sox are feeling burned by Jose Rodriguez, like, oh, wait, oh no, he was so hyped. He was maybe going to play on the South Side, this year, but I don't know why the caution, because there just does seem like every level there's always room for a new player, because they're just, it's not 26 guys or 30 or whatever the big rosters are now, of just guys you can't possibly lose. Geez, if they only had a starter, I mean, Charlotte's got like, I believe, one healthy starter right now. It's just it's madcap. We got a little more time here at the end, Darren. So I'm not trying to stump you, but I'm curious to know whether there are guys who jump to mind that you see really heating up in a second half, having a much better second half, or maybe continuing as well as they've done in the first half, or is there a guy you sense out there who might be due for, let's say a slump in the second half out of some of these guys we've talked about, or maybe somebody we haven't discussed yet?
So I think So honestly, Matthew Thompson has been a bit better lately. But just a guy that just to keep in mind who I just kind of want to see in Winston-Salem as fast as possible is Colás. He's a pitcher that was undrafted in the 20th round, or in the since they moved over to 20 rounds. So he is a bit of a find, but he is probably one of the top 5 starting pitchers in the in the system already, just because of how good he's been. He is a bit older. He's 22, so he is a bit older for low A. So I really want to see him with Winston-Salem and see if he's got a decent fastball, a couple good breaking pitches. So if you have good command of those in low A, you're going to do really well. So I want to see him just against better hitting. Like I would love to see him against Bryan Ramos caliber players to see if he's still striking them out at the radios.
Yeah, it's been really exciting with this guy because unlike even say Christian Mena or Norivera, who's like been hurt again, that sort of thing. He's like the one guy I want to say, I mean, I read every update religiously, but I want to say he's not really even had maybe one. He's never really had a blowout game. And this is a guy who never started until this year. I mean, even last year when he came to the Sox, I mean, nobody starts and pitches a long time in your first pro year, but he didn't even do that last year. So the fact this is all new to him and he sort of hasn't missed a beat is really very impressive.
Yeah, he has not allowed more than 2 runs in an outing this entire season. So, I mean, that's kind of where he's at. He's got a 2.41 ERA. He's just unbelievable right now. And at some point, I think they should start. We've talked about all these guys that should be promoted already, like Lenyn Sosa, top among them. But at some point, you got to start pushing these guys. And it's this is a we got rid of one of the rookie leagues type of thing and moved back the draft where everything's just kind of stagnant for an extra month where it shouldn't be. I don't know if that's the reason why, and nothing's kind of happening on that front, but it seems like the only guys that they're really moving are guys that they think can get to the majors like right now. With Davis Martin, really Sean Burke is the only one that's kind of bucked that trend. But he deserved it too, but I would love to see more guys against competition that might be able to push them a bit more.
I know you are loving, I can speak for Darren Black when I say, I know he is loving the month of June in the White Sox system because it is so much fun. It's not stagnant at all. There's a lot of movement. There's not guys who are just sort of playing out their string are going to be, cut the day after the draft. It's just, the excitement is palatable when it jumps off the page when I'm reading those updates and there's never any question about like, why is this guy still here? Why is he starting? Hey, I don't know what Bill Seamus's career in the White Sox system was before he made the majors with the Sox as a reliever, but hey, Cole, his son might be doing something even his dad didn't do, just as being like a dominant starter at some point in the system. Who knows? Maybe one day Cole will revert to being a reliever again, but for now, I'm with you. Let's push this and see if, it's not like the rotation. These rotations are not packed. Hell, Cole could pitch in Charlotte right now, for God's sake. There's not, geez, there's.
Yeah. He doesn't really have to rely on his changeup again, because again, he's got decent fastball, 2 good breaking balls. But as you move up, you have to, as a starting pitcher, learn to use your changeup. I think that's the main thing with him, to prove that he really is a top 20, 30 prospect in the system. But until then, he'll just keep doing awesome in low A. Yeah. But if we're talking about people who are not expecting to do as well, Terrell Tatum is going to be my number 1 guy, because he already
Come on, Darren.
It already is going down. But I kind of, that was one of the reasons why I was hesitant to add him to anything, because he just strikes out so much. But it is coming down. You can't have a 571 BABIP forever.
No. You got to be really fast to pull that off.
Yeah, but we'll see. His fall has basically gone from him to going from like really, really high highs to right now just average. And eventually it'll get to the point where, hey, are you going to be the player that you were for the first half, or are you going to change into this new one? And we saw that with Yermin Mercedes, pretty vividly last year. And every especially hitter kind of hits that point where it's kind of a two-way street. Are you going to go left and show your power that you've kind of hit in the back? Are you going to improve on your K rate like Terrell Tatum has to an extent, but he's not walking as much either. But that's kind of where he's at right now. Kind of a wait and see.
Hey, Terrell, Darren, you're my guy, but come on, Darren's calling you out. It's time. It's go buck up for big second half. Let's make some believers out of these people. But yeah, certainly what you're saying makes sense. Even I have to reluctantly admit that, but we'll see. Some of these guys do surprise, and sometimes you do find a different gear that and some of these guys we talked about here today. Sosa certainly is like a guy like where'd that come from? Not that he was bad.
I don't know.
It's like where's this going? Do you anticipate? All right, how about this? Before we go, is there going to be someone you see in the majors for the White Sox that we're just not counting on? Now, obviously, Gavin Sheets will get called up at some point. As you point out, maybe even a Cade McClure, or, there's going to be some arm from Charlotte's because they've got like 4 left, who will obviously do something, with the Sox, even briefly. Do you see Sosa, Sanchez, I don't know, Rutherford, anybody going to make it out of Charlotte or even Birmingham right now? I mean, I know there are a lot of variables, but is there anybody that you sort of have earmarked to maybe see some time on the South side?
Yeah. So I think the 2 guys at second are pretty I think one of Yolbert Sánchez or Lenyn Sosa to the majors is pretty much guaranteed at this point. It's just, when are they going to, grow up and make the decision? Though I guess
no rush.
Josh Harrison did homer today, so maybe they're just waiting for something to be worse. Maybe don't sign Leary to 3 years because we know they won't release him, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, those 2 are the top guys. If we're talking non-40-man roster decisions, those 2 are the top.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's kind of a mixed bag if we're staying away from the 40-man for true surprises. Pitching wise, Caleb Freeman, you could say, but he hasn't pitched recently either. He's probably the top relief arm in the system. He's in Birmingham right now, but again, hasn't pitched. I guess a super dark horse would be Sean Burke if he's just outrageously good in July and healthy pitching. But again, he hasn't pitched the past couple of weeks. When he is on the mound, he's doing well, but just there's not many options. I would say there's a greater likelihood of all the guys we mentioned that they just trade them for a different guy to play. I think that's a greater likelihood. Now, the quality of guy that they'll get back probably won't be that fantastic. He'll probably be relative to what they did last year, like Connor Pilkington for Cesar Hernandez, something like that. But I'm not seeing it.
I'm still angry. I'm still salty now. I've gone back to being salty about that because you talked me down when I was upset, and now Connor Pilkington's in the major leagues and Cesar Hernandez is like playing in Korea or something. Okay. Okay. Now I think we've discovered that the White Sox response to having precious few quasi-legitimate prospects is to handle them with super kid gloves. Like Sean Burke's going to pitch like once every 3 weeks because don't kill him. They're going to whatever the balance is between not letting him get so like stiff that he can never pitch again to like overworking him or not being able to wedge him in a trade at the trading deadline. Han, control yourself. Okay, I'm going to throw a name out. It's more opportunity. It's not a 3D chess move, but if, as you say, Sebi Zavala gets sent down and gets, and the Giants pick him up because naturally they will, that Carlos Perez is potentially a guy because they'll just need they may just need a catcher, and he's actually, he's showed out pretty well. I know he's got a little banged up here this month, but just in terms of like if we can think of somebody, that's a name just because they don't have any catch. I guess he's slightly ahead of Xavier Fernandez or something. I don't know. Or Nick Kuf. I knew how to pronounce his name, but then I forgot because he went down to Charlotte.
Yeah, Carlos Perez I could easily see because he actually would be a decent pinch hitter, just because he always, gets the bat on the ball. If you're looking at, like a Tony La Russa small ball, late inning kind of thing. But it's going to be really interesting what happens with Zavala, because I could, like, maybe they just choose to send down Adam Hazley instead, because they have a lot of guys that have the ability to play the outfield. I try to use that sentence instead of actually play the outfield. But
yes,
it's just, there's a lot of weird things that they've just gotten themselves into with all these guys that just don't have options left, and not great depth at a position where most teams don't have great depth. But they usually have at least one guy that they can shuttle back and forth whenever there's an injury. And right now the White Sox don't have that.
Right.
So Carlos Perez, if Seby Zavala does, get picked up, which I wouldn't say is that likely, but if that happens, Carlos Perez would be the guy to say, hey, this is your time. You're now the third catcher in the White Sox system.
We can never predict these claims, because we thought for sure Mike Rodolfo's gone. He didn't go. And then somebody picked up Yermin Mercedes. For God's sake, I'm not at all sure what the thinking is there. Whatever we think. Yeah, right. Whatever we think, it might be the opposite. But all right, I'm going to end on that note, because I actually made a suggestion that Darren Black thought was reasonably bright, and I think that's a good time to quit. I know when to walk away from the table, and I'm going to do that here for podcast 30. Darren, thank you for once again joining me. And this random, who the knock on the door could be delivering pizza or other food, or it could be Brett. Why don't you do a podcast and talk about the White Sox system? Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, I'll be here for 1 week, 2 weeks, 10 days.
For those of you watching, contrary to what you might think, this is not the room that I have locked Darren in. He actually is, I believe, free to move, work, live his life. It just, might seem that way. And, thank God when I knock on the door, he's usually there to talk White Sox system. And isn't that lucky for all of you who are listening and reading and sometimes even watching? Well, Darren, I know you'll be around. So whenever I call next, we'll have some fun for number 30. And I'll try to think up a fun theme or a game show antic for that one too.
Yeah. I'm ready.
Oh, good. All right. Thanks everybody for hanging with us. I know the system isn't exactly thrilling, and we are sort of trying to shuffle through the same dozen guys, but hopefully we can give you a continued insight on them, or at least Darren can, and I can maybe try to crack a joke or mispronounce a name. Anyhow, in a week, somewhere between a week and 2 weeks, we will see you again for number 31. Thanks for hanging with us on this one. And hey, here's to a great second half in the Chicago White Sox system.